Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be creating a page in my art journal using Aqua Tint inks. Aqua Tints are from Spectrum Noir and they are watercolor dye-based inks. They come in sets of 3 bottles. I have here the Afternoon Tea and the Perfect Pastels sets. The collections are curated with colours that match and go nicely together. These are, as I mentioned, liquid inks, so they can be used straight out of the bottle, they can be mixed together, they can be watered down to make lighter colours, and they can be used in lots of different ways, much like regular watercolours, and I'll be trying out a few different techniques during the course of this video. Before I get started, I wanted to say that while this is not a sponsored video, the company was kind enough to send me along a few of their supplies to test out, and I thank them very much for supporting my channel. There are links to the products in the description box below if you want to check out these inks. So that said, let's get started on the art journal spread. As I normally do with a new supply, I began by swatching out all the colours, just to see how they react on the paper and to get a little bit of an idea of the colours that I'm going to be working with. The inks are really vibrant and the colours are gorgeous. I particularly liked that they came in themed sets. I think that, especially for mixed media and art journaling and card making, that sticking to limited colour palettes really help to make the finished artwork look cohesive, and having a themed set of colours like this will make that process much easier. And also, if you're someone who finds it hard to pick colours, then it's really nice that these inks come in these themed sets, so you can just pick the set and use the colours in that set and you'll get a really nice cohesive looking result at the end. The inks also water down really well. I added water to each one of my colour swatches to fade the colour out and to see what sort of gradient I could make, and it all worked well. I could have made much more of a gradient for the last few colours, and that's another aspect of the inks. I overloaded my paintbrush, so I ended up with a lot of ink on the paper, so I couldn't make quite the gradient I wanted to, and these inks do go a long way, and as the colours are so pigmented and so vibrant, you really don't need to use very much of the ink. The sets also came with a pipette for each colour, which I think was really useful, as I could easily take out a little drop of ink out of each bottle and put those ink drops into a paint palette, and then from there I could mix colours, I could water down colours, I could paint with them. And I just really liked that the sets came with the pipettes. I thought that was a really nice touch. After I had finished swatching out the colours, I brought over my art journal, some brushes and a pad of 300 GSM watercolour paper. The art journal I'm using, it's actually a scrapbook, but I'm using it as an art journal, and the paper inside is not designed for watercolours. And as I wanted to create a blended background, I cut down the watercolour paper into 2 squares so that I could create my background on the watercolour paper and then glue those pieces of paper into my art journal to create the background of the spread. I'm starting by attaching the watercolour paper panels to a piece of cardboard with some masking tape. This will give me a white border all the way around the squares when I'm finished, and it will also help the paper to lay flat as I'm adding all the colours. The first step of the painting process was to apply an even layer of water all over the paper. I'm not soaking the paper, but I want all the surface area covered. Then I simply dropped in a few colours into the wet surface. The colours will spread out quite a bit, so I'm only adding the tiniest drop of colour to the page, trying to evenly distribute the various colours across the background panel, and I'm also making sure to leave space for the other colours that I want to add in a moment. I started with the rose quartz colour, then added in some biscuit, then teacup, which is the blue, and then a few drops of the macaroon colour. Once the colours were on the paper, I could then move them around a little bit with my paintbrush to create some different lines and swirls, but what I find is most effective is to use a spray bottle and spritz the paper a couple of times, and that really helps all the colours to blend and move together. The colours will move around quite a bit as they're drying, so I don't want to spray too much water here, just a little bit to help them blend a little bit more together. I also picked up the cardboard and tipped the paper from one side to the other, and this also moves the colours around a bit. And then finally I dabbed a little of the excess colour off with a paper towel, especially the red-pink colour. These background panels tend to dry lighter, especially because I added layers of water to the page, and this dilutes and lightens the ink colour. This was exactly what I wanted for the background panels today, but if you were making a background and you found that the colours were not dark enough, you can always go in, add more colours and add more layers until you get the effect that you want. So I just then repeated the entire process again for the second background panel. Whilst the background papers were drying, I moved on to create some focal elements. I'm drawing out some flowers and leaves and then outlining them with a waterproof fine liner. I'm drawing out these elements from scratch today, but normally I would use the digital stamp designs that I have. I would print out a page of flowers and print out a page of leaves, and it would make the whole creating process much quicker. However, today I didn't have any printed out, so I just quickly drew the objects that I needed. If you're interested, you can find very similar digital stamps in my online shop if you want to get some elements like this for your own mixed media and crafting. I then added a little bit of each colour to the palette that I have here and then coloured in all the elements. You can use these inks, as I said before, just like watercolours. You can mix them, you can layer them. They're really fun to work with. And I use all the colours today except for Cosmos, as I found that the Cosmos colour was a little bit too purpley for the spread that I was making. I added one flat layer of colour over everything and then went back in and added a couple of darker shadows. I moved back then to the background panels and decided to add some texture paste and stenciling. I have this lovely flower stencil here. All the supplies are listed in the description box, so you can check that out if you want more information about the various supplies that I'm using today. I added in some of the stencil coming in from the outside of the paper and added in some larger sections of the flowers, some medium sections and some smaller sections as well, and just scattered them across the page. I then moved back again to the flowers and leaves, and as they were dry, I added in some white highlights using the Winsor & Newton white ink. When I'm working with multiple elements that need to dry, I like to move back and forth. Sometimes I even have more than one project going on so that I can keep creating whilst things are drying. Drying time is also a good time to take a break and clean your supplies, particularly paintbrushes and stencils, and of course you can always speed up the drying time with a hairdryer or a heat gun. I could then start to assemble the final pages. I started by attaching the background panels with double-sided tape. Another reason why I like sometimes creating the backgrounds on separate pieces of paper and then gluing them into the book is so that it covers up any bleed through from previous pages. Here, for example, I used alcohol-based markers on one of my previous spreads. So adding in the background panels covers that up and I don't have to worry about the alcohol-based markers showing through onto the page today. Next, I added in all the flowers and leaves, clustering them in the left-hand corner and using 3D foam squares to attach them to the page. I then brought over my box of wooden chipboard pieces and picked out a few leaves and sprigs to add behind the cluster. I thought that the spread needed something on the right hand side of the page, so I coloured some of the inks out onto another piece of paper and then cut them up into banners. I then layered those banners onto some white card and then cut those down and added 3 banners in varying sizes to the spread. I found that these inks were really good at creating non-streaky flat layers of colour, and they could easily be used to create custom papers if I needed that for a project. The final step for the page was to add a few little buttons and stars. And that is my finished art journal page. I really enjoyed trying out these Aqua Tint inks today. They are really versatile and the colours are vibrant and lovely, and I was able to try out a few different techniques for using them. They currently come in 9, I think, different coloured sets, and I would definitely like to get some more of them to use in the future. Let me know in the comments down below if you have these inks or any similar watercolour inks, and let me know what are some of your favourite techniques to use them for. Thank you again to Spectrum Noir, Crafter's Companion, for sending me along these inks today. I will be using some more of their products coming up soon. If you'd like to make a guess at what product that is, leave it in the comments down below. Thank you for watching and have a creative day.